Hey everybody, it's Derek. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do another Pixinsight tutorial. Now this is going to be slightly different than the other one because we are going to use a couple different things that weren't really used in the last tutorial. On top of that, I did receive some feedback from you guys regarding the color on the last one, and I do believe that on the workflow that I may have flipped the background neutralization with the color calibration. So I've went ahead and we're going to redo this, and I'm going to bring you all the way from batch preprocessing all the way to the end of your final product so that we can go ahead and make sure that everything is easy to follow. So in this particular example, I have 19 lights, 5 darks, and 20 bias photos, or somewhere around 20 bias photos to work with. If I remember correctly. I could have taken a lot more darks, and my largest suggestion to you would be to take more darks, take more bias photos. It's really going to help you in the end. So we are going to start with the batch preprocessing. So go to Script, Batch Processing, and we're going to go to Batch Preprocessing. We're going to add our lights. And as I explained in the previous tutorial, I'll re-explain again, one of my favorite things to do is, as I'm unloading the pictures from my camera, I like to create new folders. So I've got lights, darks, and bias photos. And we're going to go to lights, and we're going to go ahead and all of these except that JPEG up there. And we're going to add those. And now we're going to go ahead and add the darks. And add the bias photos as well. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure that we have a reference image. That has to be a light. We're just going to click on any one of these, doesn't matter which one it is, and the output directory. Now again, I like to do the same thing here on this. I like to make sure that when I go in here that I am choosing the same directory for that, but I'm creating one that's going to be my output folder. So in this case, I just created a new folder. I've already got some in here, but we're going to reprocess this data for you anyway, because like I said, I want to take you from beginning to end. Actually, just so I'm not overwriting data, let's create a new one. We're just going to call this demo. Select folder, make sure that that fills out to the end. We're good. Okay, now you want to make sure here that as you're going through this, that CFA images is checked. I'm not sure if I explained this in the last tutorial, and that may have been something that we missed because some people were complaining that they were not actually getting color images. It is very important that you have CFA images checked. It's assuming that all photos that you are uploading are going to be color images. So make sure that you've got everything on there. These are my default options that I have checked: CFA images, optimize dark frames, generate rejection maps, export calibration, and up-bottom fits. So if you have those checked, you should be good. We're not going to get in depth on here as far as the image integration options for doing all of this. So I'm just going to leave these at average and sigma clipping and continue. This is going to take a little while to process. I do have quite a few images. So I'm going to go ahead and fade out here, and I will go back in at the point where this is stopped. Okay guys, so we've got the stacking done. The script is finished. Basically once you're finished, you'll be back at this window. So now that we have those registered and stacked, we're actually going to exit out of this. It's going to ask if you really want to do that. We're going to say yes. Okay, so now we are going to go to Processes, and we are going to go to Image Integration, and Image Integration again. Now we are going to add the files. Now we're going to go back to the folder where you had everything, where we went to demo. This, in this case, is the one that I created. And the only ones that we want are the registered images. So we are going to select all of these. And now we are going to go ahead and process them. This will also take a few moments. This isn't nearly as bad as doing everything else. It takes a lot less time than stacking. We're just integrating all of the images, so it's actually fairly quick. Now what we'll see when this is finished is we will have a rejection table and a high rejection, a low rejection table, and we'll be left with the integration itself. We're not too concerned with the rejections in this case. We're not going to get into that in this tutorial. We're just going to do basic stacking, basic integration, and we're going to go ahead and process the image. So now in a perfect world, if we were to go in depth here, what you would see is if we had any bad pixels on rejection high, I'd use the screen transfer function and you'd see them here. In this case, with rejection low, we would also see the same thing. Now there are some, because you can see the edges of where the images were stacked, but because I was using a guide scope, there wasn't really any drift, so pretty much we're going to be seeing everything is the same. So what we care about here is the integration. So here is the photo itself, and we are going to go ahead and start with screen transfer function as usual. As you can see, we've got some really good data here to work with. So this is actually going to be pretty easy to go through this workflow because it is good data. And there is good color in here. So now we're going to go ahead and if you see any images that have edges, you see anything when you do the rejections and you feel like this is blurry, you're going to want to do a dynamic crop. We would go here and we would crop the edges by dragging where you need it. And we're going to click process. I don't need to crop it, but I'm going to do the edges just so we can get the motion of the workflow. And now we are going to do background extraction. So you're going to go to process, background modelization, and automatic background extractor. If we wanted to do a really killer job, we would go through dynamic background extraction, but that can get a little bit more complex. I will actually do a separate tutorial just on dynamic background extraction, so we can go over that. For now, we are going to do automatic background extraction. Exit out of that. Now, the important thing here is that we're going to go to correction and go to subtraction. Now, I do not like to replace the target image. I like to keep this one in the background because if I feel like I need to start over, I've got a clean slate and I've already done all my cropping and everything I want to do. So I will be starting with a new image. So we're going to go ahead and do subtraction. We're not going to replace the target image, and we're going to process this. We'll be given a new instance of the Orion Nebula. There we go. And one thing you can do is you can click on the integration for background here, and if you do a screen transfer function auto stretch, you'll see all of the light pollution or the background pollution that you are removing from here. And really the whole point of that is not all of them are going to be perfect. You might have some light pollution from a street light, you could have something from somebody turning on a porch light, even if you're in the middle of boonies, maybe somebody had a flashlight, or just things didn't go as you planned. Anyway, you'll always want to remove that, so always do automatic background extraction. And once we can confirm that that looks good, we're going to go back to the new integration here, and we are going to auto stretch this as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now we can see a huge difference. Obviously we've got some pretty good data to work with. The core is a little bit blown out. I will show you how to fix that in a minute here. Now what we're going to do is background neutralization. So we need to find a place that is going to be considered background. It's going to be the darkest area. It's going to be considered quote-unquote sky. So in this case, I feel like this is a pretty safe area for this, and this is a pretty safe area for this. I'm actually going to shoot for the middle. We're going to zoom in a little bit because it's darker, and this area right here looks pretty good for the background. So we're going to select this. And for the white reference, we are going to use all of Orion. So what we're doing here is if you go up to the top here, you can see new preview mode, and you just create a preview where you feel the background is going to be best. Create another preview over the Orion Nebula, and we're going to go ahead and run background neutralization here. That's going to be all processes background neutralization. We are going to need to set the background, which is going to be preview 1. That's the one that we've created. If you're not sure which one is which, you can roll your mouse over it and it will show you. So if I clicked preview 2 and I was like, man, I just don't know if that's the one I wanted, obviously we can see that this is a white reference. This is all of Orion. So we'll go back to preview 1, roll it over. We can see that that's our background. It's exactly what we want. Go ahead and click OK. We're going to go ahead and process that. There we go. As you can see, the color changed a little bit. And now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to run color calibration. So you always run background neutralization first, and then you run color calibration. We're going to go to color calibration. And this one's going to be kind of flipped. So the first one is not your background reference. The first one is your white reference. So in this case, we're going to go to preview 2, roll our mouse over, make sure that that is the nebula. It is. We're good. And I'm actually going to turn structure detection off. I've kind of been playing with this one. So the difference is between structure detection and not using structure detection is if you are turning off structure detection, it's going to use all of the stars and all of the data that it can in your white reference preview, which is what we want because the Orion Nebula has a lot of stars and we've got an awful lot of stuff. You could technically use the entire picture if you wanted. In this case, I'm just going to use the nebula. And for the background reference, it's going to be the same, preview 1. We're going to mouse over, make sure that's what we're looking for, and it is. Okay, and we're going to go and do that. We should see the colors adjust themselves. There we go. That looks pretty good. So we can see some of the blue in here, see some of the red. The stars look pretty good. They don't look off. They don't look crazy. Looks right around what we want. Now, we've already done our color calibration. We've done our background neutralization. Now, the other thing that I wanted to touch on was going to be histogram transformation, or HDRM, multi-scale transform, basically. We'll do histogram transformation first because we do need to get rid of that. So what that means is if I turn this preview off, you're going to see that this has not been stretched. So if I were to save the image right now, even with this preview on, this is what we're going to see. So we have to fix that. So we're going to go to Processes. And we're going to go to Histogram Transformation. And we're actually going to drag where it says New Instance here, this little triangle. You can drag that down here onto the bar of Histogram Transformation. You'll see this curve change. That's exactly what we want. We're going to apply that. And it's going to make your image look crazy wild. Oh, and that's fine. We're going to turn off the preview up here by clicking this. And now everything is normal. So now if I save the image, this is what it's going to look like. Now, we don't need our previews anymore, so we can turn these off. You can go to Preview, delete all. We're done with those. Now what we want to do is the HDRM multi-scale transform, and that's to fix the core that's blown out. So we're going to go to Process, All Processes, Multi-Scale Transform. Now, the lower number of layers you get, you're going to have a more extreme it's going to be a more extreme example. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is this is the default is B3 spline. I've done linear interpolation on this, and I haven't really seen a huge difference. So I'm going to turn this up to about 8 layers, and we're going to try this on lightness, which is what we want, because what we want to do is apply this to the areas that are blown out. So this will pull some of this detail back with some layers, and it shouldn't affect the lightness too much. And if that's not what we want, I'll jump it up to 9 layers. If that's too much, then we can jump it back down. We'll try 7. So let's go ahead and try 8 layers first. And it shouldn't take too long to process. It's usually pretty quick. There we go. So that looks pretty good, actually. The core is still a little bit blown out. But I don't want to get too aggressive with it. I feel like if I get too aggressive, I'm going to lose a lot of detail, and I'm going to lose a lot of what I want, and it's going to start looking cartoony and strange. So this looks pretty good. We're going to leave this at 8 layers for now. So now that we've got that fixed a little bit better, we're going to extract the luminance. We're going to go up here, click on this, And we're going to end up with the black and white here. So we're going to go ahead and leave this open. That's fine. And now we're going to do an LRGB combination. Now the important thing is to make sure that you click this. It's not going to actually let you apply it to your black and white picture. We're going to leave this here. We're going to change that to the integration L. That's the black and white photo that we have sitting in the background. And we're going to move the saturation down. So what we're actually trying to aim for here is to pull out some more color. So we're going to saturate this a little bit more, but we don't want it to look cartoony. We don't want it to look crazy. This is not going to change the color calibration. We're just changing the saturation of the color that is already there. So if you feel like the captured color that you have in your image is way too faint and you want to bump it up, this is a very good way to do it. It's very quick. So we're going to start with 300. We're going to see what that looks like. And it's actually the lower you go, the more saturation. Okay, that actually looks pretty good, but I want maybe just a touch more. So let's bring that, well, yeah, if I go too much further, we're going to get these stars oversaturated. So let's pull this down to maybe 290. And this time we're going to turn on chrominance noise reduction. You can always, I always go back one step when I'm doing this because I don't want to apply it twice. So we're going to go ahead and apply chrominance noise reduction. We're going to try it at 290. Just a little bit more saturation, but not too much. Now, if you turn on chrominance noise reduction, it does take a little bit longer to process. Perfectly normal. We're just making sure that it's not going to affect things as much. We're not going to get any weird static, or we're not going to have any issues with the saturation. One thing that you can see if you do too much saturation is you start getting weird artifacts in really bright areas. That actually looks pretty good. At 290, that's pretty well saturated. We've got a lot of detail in the dust here. That makes me really happy. And it doesn't look overkill. It's not too much color. I think that's just right. So we're going to leave that. And now we're going to go ahead and work with a filter. So in this filter, we're going to do range selection. So go to Processes, All Processes, and we're going to go to Range Selection. And we're going to always turn on the preview so you know what you're selecting. Now in this case, there's an awful lot of dust in this picture, and we don't want to ruin that. So what we want to phase out is the background and not the dust. So we're going to be really conservative with this filter. So what we're going to do here is I always like to turn up the fuzziness somewhere pretty close to 10 and the smoothness, just kind of have a feel for it. If you have it too far down here, it's going to look grainy when you apply the filter. Now you can see all of the artifacts, some of the dust. I should have done a flat or a couple of flats. Unfortunately, I just did darks and I just did bias when I stacked. So some of these areas, when you turn on a range selection, you're gonna see some of the dust particles on your lens. We're gonna ignore that. We're going after keeping the nebula and keeping the dust. So everything that's white is going to be kept. Everything that's dark is not. So if we go way down here, you can see the outskirts of the nebula here. We definitely want to keep that. So we're going to keep pulling this back and pulling this back. You can see some of that dust, and this is all dust. That looks good. And this is all dust. So this is not cutting out the nebula. We're not cutting out the running man. We still have some of this fine dust detail down here. See how much further we can pull this back without getting too much. That's way too much. So we're going to bump this down. I'm going to go with a 0.09. And I mean, if you decide to change your mind, you can always remove the mask. You can always change your mind. That's okay. So we're going to go ahead and apply this, and make sure this is always to lightness. Okay. So now we've got our mask. Now you're going to move your mouse over where it says range mask, and we're going to drag this onto your image. It's going to turn red. There's really no reason to have that. Turn off show mask. And we're going to click on invert mask immediately as soon as you do this. Now what we're going to do is go to process, and we're going to go to curves. It's important to know at this point that you are changing the way that the image is working. So if you want to do any other color calibration, now is the time to do it before we get into this, because once you start getting into curves, you're changing the image completely. So always turn on the preview. Now that we have a real-time preview, we're going to bring this down just a little bit and see how much of the background goes away. And like I said, I want to keep some of this dust, but we also want to phase out a little bit of the background, so we don't want to get too crazy. I can still see a lot of this dust here. Some of the background's a little bit darker. Still seeing the running man. There's dust up in here. There's dust coming out of there. So that looks pretty good. And we can see a little bit of detail coming out in here too. That's good. So I don't know if I want to get any more extreme than that, because as you can see, if I do that, we start clipping all of that dust. And so I feel like this filter actually turned out pretty good where I put it. So 0.09 is about where I had mine. Everybody's is going to be different. So again, you're going to have to just kind of make a judgment call on, is this dust or is this an artifact? Is this dust or is this background? Chances are if you see this and you see brown and you're seeing all these colors, you're looking at dust. So let's apply this. It looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to get rid of that preview. We're going to create another preview. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to invert the mask again. And now we are playing with the opposite side of the mask. Now we are playing with the lightness. So instead of trying to phase out the background, now we are actually affecting the nebula itself and all of the dust. So if you feel like it's too dim, we can kind of bring that up just a little bit and brighten it up. But as you can see, that's a little bit much. And I really don't want to mess with the color too much. It looks good. I might brighten it up just a hair. So it kind of brings out all of the stars. We're going to bring things out of the background. And I kind of like to do that sometimes just to kind of take the attention away from some of the weird background stuff. Brighten things up just a hair, bring more attention to the stars. And these are really, they look good. These are not oversaturated. They don't look overkill. Decent color in the nebula. Very happy with this. We're going to apply this. Okay. Now, the next important thing that we're going to do, keeping in mind that you recently went up here and you went to mask and you inverted it. So what you should see is enable. You're not going to see this checked. So we are working with the lightness. So we are working with the nebula. And what we're going to do is do local histogram equalization. Now what that's going to do is bring out a little bit more detail. We're going to turn on the real-time preview. Now the amount on here is ridiculous. This is always going to look stupid the first time you turn this on. That looks crazy. You don't want to do that to your image. And it's important to remember that this is only going to do this to the lightness the way we have this selected right now. And the whole idea of this is to kind of bring out some of these areas where you can see that there's a little bit more detail to be had, and you can see some of the waves in here, and you can see some of the nebulosity. We really want to bring out some of that detail, but we don't want to kill it. So I bring mine up. First I want to see what it looks like without it. As you can see, it looks a little more fuzzy, and that's because of the mask that we put on it. So in doing this, instead of making everything look too smooth as you change the curves, you get to bring out just a little bit more of that detail. So let's see let's go like a 1.5. See how much detail we can bring out. That looks pretty good. It doesn't look like it's killing it. As you can see, the more we get out there, you start affecting the background too. You can see that everything out here is changing. Now I can see the dust particles more. Now we don't want to see all the dust on the lens. You can fix that with flat, like I said. So we're going to put this maybe down to like 1.7. There we go. That looks pretty good. So we still have really good edge detail, lots of dust detail, and that actually helps bring some of this out down here too. So that looks really good. We're going to apply this. Okay, so now we can go ahead and turn off the mask. We're done with that. And now we have our finished result. So as you can see, Got a lot of good detail in there. The color looks good. It's not oversaturated. Everything feels pretty good. We can see that there is a color difference in the stars, and that's always a good thing to check. So as you can see, we've got some yellow stars, all of the blue and the white. Everything looks good. It doesn't look off. So yeah, from A to Z, there we have it. So we went from stacking the photos in batch preprocessing, image integration, and all the way from a dynamic crop all the way to local histogram equalization. So I hope you've found this helpful. If you have any feedback, please leave it in the comments. I'm always happy to take feedback. And if you have any requests for any specific objects that you would like to see processed, and maybe a workflow for that, let me know, and I will see what I can do about getting that for you. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful, and if you haven't seen these before, like, subscribe. Have yourself a wonderful day.